Okay, so picture this. A huge earthquake hits somewhere, homes flattened, chaos everywhere. And within hours, the news is full of it. Airplanes landing, emergency teams rushing in. But then, maybe a couple of years down the line, you hear about something different happening in that same place. Like engineers building better water systems or locals getting small loans to start businesses. Both of those things. That's international aid, but they're uh, clearly very different things. International aid, it's this massive global thing, always seems to be in the headlines somehow. Yet how it actually works, it can feel really complex, almost contradictory sometimes. So today on the deep dive, we're going to try and cut through some of that noise. Our mission, really, is to get you past those surface level news reports. We want to give you a clearer, sort of well-informed view on international aid. We'll look at different kinds, why it's given, and how it actually plays out on the ground, which can be surprising. By the end, you should have a much better handle on this vital and, often pretty debated global effort. So let's get into it. Let's unpack this system. Now, we use this big term, international aid, but it covers a lot. I think it's really key to start by splitting it into its two main types, right? Because they have totally different goals, different methods. It's not just wording. It changes everything, like what he gets sent and the long-term effects.
Exactly. That's the crucial starting point. On one side, you've got humanitarian aid. This is basically the world's 911 response. It's all about immediate relief in really extreme life or death situations. Think of it like the fire department rushing to a house fire.
And those fires can be different things, can't they? Like obviously natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, huge floods, but also things caused by people, like wars or terrible famines, maybe made worse by fighting or crops suddenly failing.
Precisely. In those cases, time is absolutely critical. The aid has to be immediate, life-saving. What humanitarian groups provide isn't focused on the long term, not initially anyway. It's emergency stuff. Food, clean water, shelter, urgent medical care, and the logistics to actually get it there. Agencies like Oxfam, Médecins, Sans Frontières, the World Food Program, they're the ones right on the front line.
Yeah, and that delivery aspect, it's often way harder than people realize, I think. Like trying to get tons of food into some remote village when the roads are gone after a quake, or getting medicine into a war zone. It's not just dropping off boxes.
Oh, absolutely not.
These groups are often negotiating safe passage, setting up supply lines from scratch in dangerous places.
It's a logistical nightmare, truly. Every second counts.
Okay, so that's the immediate crisis response. But then there's the other side of the coin.
Right. The counterpart is development aid. And this takes a much more strategic, long-view approach. Its purpose is different. It's about contributing to a country's lasting economic and social progress. It uses specific, often multi-year projects. The idea is to build resilience. So ideally, a community can handle future shocks better and maybe eventually not need emergency aid.
Okay, so if humanitarian aid is tents and food parcels, what does development aid actually look like? What kind of projects are we talking about?
Well, it varies hugely. One really interesting area is what we call intermediate technology. This isn't about bringing in the fanciest, latest gadgets. It's about equipment and machinery that actually fits the local situation. Crucially, it needs to be something local people can operate and, importantly, maintain themselves. That's key for sustainability, for real empowerment.
Makes sense. Like what specifically?
Well, a classic example might be something like treadle pumps in rural areas, simple foot-powered irrigation pumps. They let small farmers water more land, boost their crops, but without needing, say, complex diesel engines or electricity. Or maybe solar-powered water filters for villages that aren't on any grid.
Right. Tailoring it so it actually works and lasts there.
Yeah.
That's smart. What else falls under development aid?
Beyond technology, a lot of focus goes on infrastructure improvement, big foundational stuff. So improving water and sanitation systems is huge. Building or fixing roads essential for connecting farmers to markets, for example. Establishing reliable power sources. Building schools, clinics. These are the basic building blocks for growth.
Okay.
And then there's also seed money. This is like initial funding for small local businesses or maybe cooperatives. The goal is to spark entrepreneurship, help people become self-sufficient, create jobs locally instead of just, relying on external help.
Yeah, you can really see how successful projects like that, better roads, a new local business could make a community stronger, less vulnerable maybe,
Yeah.
so they wouldn't need that emergency help quite so badly next time something hits.
Exactly. It can create this positive cycle moving from crisis towards genuine resilience.
But who's actually driving all this? Who decides where the money goes? Who holds the purse strings?
Well, the main players you hear about are the donor countries, the nations giving the aid and the recipients. Usually the government's getting it, though sometimes it's other groups. And it's worth remembering, donor countries aren't all the same in how much they give. There's a lot of variation, often measured against their total national wealth, their gross national income, or GNI.
Right, like the UN target of 0.7% of GNI.
Precisely. It's a long-standing target, but very few countries actually hit it consistently, which tells you there are political and economic factors involved in these decisions.
So it's not just governments talking to other governments then. Are there other players influencing things?
Oh, definitely. It's much more complicated than that. Governments aren't deciding this stuff alone in some room. You have a whole ecosystem of non-governmental organizations, NGOs like the aid agencies we mentioned, Oxfam, and many others, big and small, plus various pressure groups or advocacy organizations. They have a significant impact on where aid goes and what it's actually used for.
How do they do that?
Well, they can be researchers identifying needs on the ground. They can be advocates pushing for certain issues. They often implement projects directly. And they can lobby their own governments, the donor governments, to focus on particular places or problems.
Okay, so lots of influences. And that complexity, I guess, leads to situations where the money comes with, well, strings attached.
Yeah.
Which brings us to something called tied aid. What exactly is that?
Yeah, tied aid is a big one. It's pretty much what it sounds like. It's aid given by one country to another, but with a condition. The recipient country has to spend that money buying goods or services from the donor country.
Ah, okay. So it's a gift, but you have to spend it back in my shop, essentially.
That's a good way to put it. It's an explicit condition and clearly one that benefits the donor's economy.
Right. And that immediately raises a question, doesn't it? Is this genuinely helpful for the country getting the aid in the long run? Or is it maybe more about boosting the donor's own businesses? Critics often raise this point.
They do.
While it clearly helps the donor, stimulates their industries, creates jobs back home, boosts exports for the recipient, it can have real downsides.
Absolutely. The recipient might be forced to buy equipment or hire consultants from the donor country, even if they're more expensive or maybe not the best quality compared to what's available elsewhere globally.
So they don't get the best value for money, potentially.
Exactly. Or they might end up with technology that isn't really suitable for their specific needs or context, just because that's what the donor country happens to produce or specialize in. This lack of choice can really undermine the whole point of empowering them to make their own decisions about development. It can make the aid less effective, and sometimes it might even hinder the growth of their own local industries that could have supplied those things. It limits their control over their own path.
Yeah, that's a really critical point of tension, isn't it? Shows how the motives behind aid can be mixed, helping others, but also maybe helping yourself. But okay, despite all these complexities, these debates about tied aid and influence, most people would probably still agree that the big overall aim of all international aid is poverty reduction, right? That's the shared goal.
Yes, I think that's fair to say. The general agreement on what we're trying to achieve, helping people escape poverty, is pretty solid. But, and this is where the real deep dive comes in, the discussion and debate is all about how you actually do that most effectively. There's no single magic formula everyone agrees on.
Right. And this is where different ideas or strategies come into play. We talked about development aid focusing on economic projects. Is that seen as the main way to cut poverty?
For a lot of experts, yes, that's a central argument. They believe the best use of aid funds is direct investment in things that drive economic development. The thinking is, if you build solid infrastructure, introduce useful, sustainable technology, support local businesses, you create a system-wide change.
You build the foundation.
Exactly. You generate jobs, income, real opportunities, and that lifts people out of poverty in a more lasting way, rather than just providing, say, temporary food aid. It's about enabling economies to stand on their own feet.
Okay, that makes sense as a core strategy. But are there other major ways people think aid should work for poverty reduction, beyond just the economic angle?
Oh, definitely. While the economy is key, many argue you need other things working alongside it. It's not an either situation. For instance, some approaches put a heavy emphasis on health, focusing aid on things like vaccination programs, fighting major diseases like malaria or HIV/AIDS, strengthening basic healthcare clinics.
And the logic there is?
Well, a healthy population is crucial for everything else. Healthy kids can go to school, healthy adults can work and be productive. It underpins economic potential. Think about GAVI, the Vaccine Alliance. The impact on child survival rates has been huge.
Yeah, clear link. And education, I imagine, fits in similarly.
Precisely. Another major focus is education-focused aid. That could mean building schools, training teachers, providing learning materials, scholarships, helping develop relevant curricula. The argument here is that education unlocks potential on so many levels: better health decisions, more innovation, the skills people need for better jobs, and to drive the economy forward.
Right.
And then there's also a growing focus, quite rightly, on governance reform. This means using aid to help strengthen public institutions, improve transparency, fight corruption, build fair legal systems. Because the thinking is you can pour money into schools or businesses, but if the underlying governance is weak or corrupt, that investment won't achieve its potential. It won't be sustainable.
Okay, so connecting all that, it sounds like it's less about picking just one strategy and more about finding the right mix.
Yeah.
And the debate is maybe about what that mix should be and in what order you do things.
Exactly. It's often about the balance and the sequencing and understanding that context matters hugely. What works in one country might not be the priority in another.
And hopefully for you listening, understanding these different approaches helps you look at news about aid a bit more critically, get beyond the simple headlines. Right, so let's recap quickly. We talked about humanitarian aid, that immediate lifeline, and contrasted it with development aid focused on long-term building. We looked at the players involved, donors, recipients, NGOs, and that tricky issue of tied aid. And we've seen that while poverty reduction is the big goal, there's this ongoing discussion about the best way to get there. Is it economic focus, health, education, governance, or some combination?
Yeah, and as we think about all these different types of aid and the conditions that sometimes come with them and these different strategies, it really does make you pause and wonder, doesn't it? Beyond just meeting immediate needs, how do we actually know if aid is truly helping countries move towards self-sufficiency? Or is there a risk, sometimes, that it might unintentionally create a different kind of dependence?
That's a heavy question.
It is. How do we measure the real long-term impact? Not just in dollars or projects, but in terms of a nation's ability to determine its own future, its own prosperity, ensuring that good intentions actually translate into sustainable, dignified progress for the people receiving the aid. Well, that's the ongoing challenge, isn't it? It needs constant questioning and adapting.